Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Keep It Simple podcast. If you're watching this, you've caught up with us for episode 11, and this is one that I have been waiting on. So on today's episode, we have my very dear friend, Cathy Atkins. Cathy is one in a million in so many ways. She is a wife. She is a mother. She is a professional. An award-winning professional in many realms, and she is a pastor. She's an incredible friend, faithful to the core, and in a world full of takers, Cathy Atkins is a giver. And so I am blessed beyond belief to call her friend. And Cathy, welcome to the podcast.
Can I just keep that little section and record it and play it over and over again for myself when I need?
Yes, yes, you can. Yep, it will be. It will stand. It'll be available, and you can just loop it. Every word is true. Yeah, what a gift to call you friend. For real. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for making time. I'm sure it'll come out in this episode, but you are probably the busiest person I know, and so to make time to come on and to share and give, thank you.
Well, you're welcome anytime. You're one of those people, Ben, that anything you ask me to do, I'm there. So yeah.
Well, so
somebody else can be the judge of this.
yeah. I guess a good place to start would be maybe just kind of talk through how you and I know one another, maybe where our paths cross, kind of how the Lord has worked in and through our friendship. That might be a great launching place.
You know, I think it's funny how God sets up relationships and they come full circle over time. Because I think you met my daughters before you met me.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
That was a relationship through, was it North Carolina?
Yeah, Hinton. Yeah, we were in Hayesville, North Carolina. We were, yeah.
And I was at Locust Grove Church, where you now pastor. We went there for 20 years more than that even, because our kids grew up in that church, and they were on a youth group mission trip. Caitlin was, anyway, my older one. And our youth group connected with your youth group, and it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was actually, believe it or not, Tim Rost was that. So the way that story went down is every morning early 5:30, there were only two people on the back porch of that retreat center drinking coffee, and it was Tim and me. And anybody that knows Tim knows that, you know, if there's only two people on the porch, he's one of them, he's going to come and engage and, you know, and interact. And we hit it off quickly, and your kids, y'all's group and our group just meshed. The adults meshed. The students meshed. It was unusual, very, very unusual, but in a beautiful way. Yeah.
Yeah, those relationships were deep, and they've stayed steadfast. And that's been, man, I don't know, 10 years ago or so or more, I would imagine. Don't you think?
Yeah, 2011. So whatever the math is on that, 12 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Would have been about that time. And then I guess the first time I met you and Aaron would have been when Jim Seahorn, remember we flew up and General Seahorn gave a talk over in the Hearn Center, the big basketball gymnasium. That was quite the event. It was sponsored by VU, and I remember, wasn't like the Mizzou wrestling team there and the football team. And
oh gosh, we had a huge crowd for that. And that was on, that memory came up on my Facebook not just a couple weeks ago or so. It has
really.
Yeah. We're in the season when that kind of happened, I think.
Yeah. Caroline Freeman. I don't know if you remember CB, but Caroline Freeman was on that trip. She and her dad and Seahorn and I are the ones that came up, and She sent me a message just the other day that was pictures from that, and it was 11 years ago that day, whatever day she sent it.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool. Um, I think about that often. When I go to do hospital visits, I pull in, and the Hearn Center is right across from um, the University Hospital, and so when I make that corner and see the Hearn Center, I recall that very often. But yeah, so that was our first time to Middle Missouri, to Midway for sure. And who would have thought? Uh, you talk about relationships and the way God works through relationships. Who would have thought all these years later we would be connected the way we are and serving alongside each other and
Mm-hmm.
in ministry the way that we are? And just pretty cool the way God works. You never know. You really never know.
Those relationships are awesome. I remember one of the times you came up to speak to our youth group. There was a couple of days where you came up and did some sessions for the youth group, and the ones that stand out to me in particular was the time that we went back in the fellowship hall and had communion,
Hmm.
because you enjoy doing communion differently,
Hmm.
and it's beautiful. And I'll never forget those times where we got to kneel across from each other and serve somebody communion and pray with them.
Hmm.
What a beautiful, intimate experience that was. And I
Yeah.
think there were a lot of sweet relationships that came from that too.
Yeah. I'd
So
forgotten all about that.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. I
there
remember
was
that now.
there was healing that took place
Yeah.
in those.
Yeah, because your youth group, you met in Annex, right? So
Hmm.
what's now Twice Blessed is where youth was. That's where you all did youth. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we did those evening sessions. I remember that now. Yeah, we would do the evening sessions there and then come up to the fellowship hall for communion.
Hmm.
I remember that. Yeah, pretty cool. So now, so let's talk about bivocational ministry. So that's one thing that's super unique. So far, this is episode 11. We're still pretty fresh, pretty new into this, but um, a lot of the folks, my friends who have come on, are either in vocational ministry or have been in vocational ministry and have stepped away and are doing other work, but are still very, very active servants in their local churches. Um, the really cool thing is you are the first of my friends, and there'll be others, but you're the first of my friends to come on who is actually in bivocational ministry. So you have a full time regular career,
Hmm.
secular career, and are doing full time um, ministry, pulpit, pastoral ministry. Let's talk about that a little bit. How did you end up where you are? B, how do you manage and juggle all of that? I think that'd be a great place to kind of kick off.
Sure. When I was at Locust Grove, where you're at now, I did a lot of pulpit supply training to help fill in for pastors who were on vacation or needed to step away for a period of time or whatever,
Okay.
and even help do training for others who wanted to step into that role at the district level. And so my background, because of my background in speaking, and I it's just a passion. I
Hmm.
love it. I love doing that. I wasn't born with the fear of getting up in front of people. I
Yeah.
love it. It fuels me. And so through that experience and then also through the business that I worked in, founded a relationship with a group of people in Ashland, where my church is at now. They were
Hmm.
going through some transitions, and one of the ladies that I knew from my secular career called to ask if I could come down and help out. And so, of course, I'm thinking, yeah, sure, I fill in all the time here and there, so I'll be happy to come down and help you out once or twice.
Yeah.
that was
How
six.
long ago was
That was
that?
6 years ago.
6 years. Yeah, I told y'all she was a giver. I tried to tell you. 6 years. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's been
Wow.
beautiful. It's been beautiful. It's done so much for me. I heard the statement said, and I can't remember who exactly said it. It might have been Bill Johnson, but he said, "I don't study to teach; I study to learn." What feeds me feeds them.
Wow.
And I have grown so much in the last 6 years. I mean, it just,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Um, the opportunity to grow in my relationship with God and see things open up has been just beautiful.
Yeah.
There are parts of being a bivocational pastor that are wonderful that
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trade for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there are parts that are absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
So let's start with the wonderful. Let's unpack that a little bit. Talk through the wonderful parts of bivocational ministry.
Well, Aaron, my husband and I served down there together. And one of the things that we've talked about that has been so nice about being not in full-time pastoral role is it has created an environment where the church has to step up and be the church.
Wow.
And so that was an expectation from the beginning. In fact, we moved midstream from one side of town to the other side of town. And there were a few people down there that said, kind of, wistfully, why don't you move to Ashland?
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron and I kind of thought about it and prayed about it. And the answer was, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. And the reason is because of what I just said. We wanted the church to be the church. I think sometimes there's a dependence on, I'm a consumer. I go to church and I consume the worship and I either like it or I don't, and then I go home. And if
Mm-hmm.
things don't get done, people point to the pastor and why didn't you do that? And um, we decided that the worst thing that we could do for that church would be to move to Ashland because because of the transition they went through, they needed to learn. Number one, they were pulling out of a denomination, becoming a non-denominational, which means they had the blessing of being able to wrestle with the articles of faith on their own rather than being
Mm-hmm.
handed them.
Mm-hmm.
They had to struggle through it on their own. And they had to decide, this is what we believe and this is why we believe it, which is a beautiful thing. And they also had to step up and be the church. And we didn't want to create an environment that just put them right back into the box that they just came
Mm-hmm.
out of,
Mm-hmm.
and give them the opportunity to grow on their own like they needed to.
Yeah. Have they taken that challenge and stepped into those things?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Not 100%. You're always going
Sure.
to have a few that just
Right.
decide, this isn't for me. This isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to varying degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But that's human nature.
Yeah. 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 So that's the beautiful side. Any other beautiful parts and pieces?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. That was the one that came to mind first.
Yeah.
So,
And so then what about on the negative side? So you said there's beautiful and not so beautiful parts and pieces to bivocational ministry. What would be some of the downside that you just lived experience?
the downside is trying to get everything done and trying to
Yeah.
judge. There's no compartmentalization. Because everything bleeds into everything. And I have a job to do. I work for an advertising agency and it is
Yeah.
demanding, and I am learning new roles and I'm responsible for team, and I have, goals and expectations and goals for clients that I have to meet. And I'm doing that. And my phone, you know, one morning there were 47 text messages,
Yeah.
and it's not just the church, it's my kids, and it's
Oh
my
yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
We moved next
Yeah.
door to my mom so that we could take care of my mom after my dad passed away in 2019. And um, I just feel like sometimes my head's going to pop off.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. So, for those of you listening, Cathy and I meet for coffee every other Monday. And yesterday was one of those Mondays, and we were together, I don't know, roughly an hour maybe. And just in the time we were together, there were 17 texts. As we were parting, you kind of woke your phone up and took a look. You're like, look, there's 17 text messages in an hour. So I can vouch for that downside. Um, so are you a regimented rhythm person or are you more spontaneous? So do you, talking about juggling your full-time job um, in advertising, marketing, and your pastoral role, are you kind of a regimented person, or are you a whatever fires right in front of you, you do the best you can with what you got? How do you roll?
Um, you know what? I have to say, probably a little bit of both. I would
Okay.
I would like to be a little more regimented than I really am.
Mm-hmm.
I am regimented to a degree because that's kind of what helps. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, my employer is beautiful because they give me the flexibility of somebody. If I need to run up to the hospital, I just go. They
Yeah.
don't question. I get my job done.
Sure.
It's beautiful to have that kind of work environment. And like today, I ran down to meet with somebody for a funeral that I'm doing on Sunday, and so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of flexibility is great. But it also requires a little bit of planning. If I completely flew by the seat of my pants, I think I'd be underwater pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. And that knowing you and knowing your commitment to excellence, so you don't do anything halfway. So to keep all those balls in the air while being a wife, while being a mother, while being a daughter, um, whew, man, oh man. Um, so tell us, because I don't know a lot of your story. I know a lot of your story from a certain point in time forward. Would you be willing just to share kind of some of your story, where you've come from, kind of the evolution and growth in your faith, how God incrementally has worked in your life to kind of bring you to where you are? And you can start at any point. You can go back as far as you choose.
Sure. My background is I grew up in church. I've been in church since I was a little kid. I was baptized as a Catholic when I grew up with going to church every single Sunday with my mom and had to wear a dress and the whole 9 yards, and
Wow.
went to Catholic grade school. So I was in church every Sunday morning, 6 days a week, um, and loved it. I love the customs and I love the tradition and I love, just the habit that you get to create and all of that. I
Hmm.
felt was very beautiful. And I had a good, solid upbringing. My husband was born and raised Southern Baptist. And so you get a Catholic and a Baptist together. You
Woo,
got to,
girl.
you got to find somewhere to go.
Oh.
So we found a home in the Methodist Church, and that's where we raised our kids. And then when our kids went to school, we found a private school for them in the Lutheran Church, and
Okay.
so they went to grade school in a Lutheran church. So if there's
I did not know that.
if there's a
Yeah.
renter's card requirement for heaven, I probably have one. Not a problem.
You got all the
I got them all. I always tell people I'm a denominational mutt. So Um, but
uh,
but at one point when I was in when we were at Locust Grove, I remember Aaron and I were going through some really really difficult period of time.
mhm,
There was a lot of strain physically, illnesses in the family, financially. There was a
mhm,
period of time where we lost our 18-year-old nephew suddenly. He
mm,
had a heart attack. I had a cancer scare, job loss, financial. That was in 2008. I owned a business and everything. I mean, it just felt like the world was crashing in.
mhm,
And I remember sitting at church and telling God, look, if this is nothing more than a self help section, I'm done.
mhm,
I'm done. I'm ready to walk away because I need
mhm,
you. And I don't know if you're real.
mhm. Amen. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It was hard. And
yeah,
and I'm telling you, that's what changed everything.
yeah,
He showed up.
yeah. I've been there where you're like, where you're crying out, and you're like, Jesus, I've spent a great deal of my adult life telling people about you, and I need you. Like you got to show up.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
a what a. I mean, you don't wish for those seasons, but what a beautiful place. Where it's like I teach this stuff. I preach this stuff. I read this stuff. I eat and drink and sleep and breathe this stuff. But now the rubber meets the road,
Yeah.
and you got to show up. So that was '08 for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I sat in that sanctuary and I cried for an hour. I couldn't quit.
Wow.
I couldn't quit.
Wow.
And he showed up, man. I don't know what else to tell you. He showed up,
How?
and
What does that look like? What did his showing up look like?
it was the first time that I've had an actual Holy Spirit experience, and I learned that he's real.
Okay.
He's absolutely real. It's not just something you read about. It's not some fairy tale. It's not some
Hmm.
good book that just helps you live a good life.
Yeah.
He's real. He's
So
absolutely real.
what was that like? That moment, the Holy Spirit moment, and that kind of um, that aha when you know that you know. What was that like for you?
We were going through a Bible study at the time with Judith and Francis McNutt and the Christian Healing Ministries, and we were
Okay.
learning all about the gifts of the Spirit. And
Hmm.
I wasn't raised with any of that stuff. I didn't know anything about it.
Hmm.
Thought it was a little cuckoo, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. Yeah.
And we're sitting in a circle, and we're supposed to be praying for the Holy Spirit to come fill us. Ben, this is going to be weird, man. But
No, it's not at all. Let it roll.
we're supposed to be praying for this, and I am literally on the edge of my seat. And there were, I don't know how many times I almost stood up, almost walked out. I'm like, this is weird, this is stupid, I am done. People, a bunch of freaks, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
And it was one of those, and something made me just stay.
Hmm.
And so it got done, and I thought, I'm leaving. I get out in my car, I'm headed home, I'm on my way home, and all of a sudden what comes out of my mouth sounded like E-I-E-I-O.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, you got to be kidding me. That's about the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard in my life.
Yes.
I go home, I crawl in bed, and I wake up in the middle of the night just with this prayer language coming out of my mouth. I woke up from
Mm.
a dead sleep, this warmth in my heart. Um, and it's like he knows I'm hyper analytical. I mean, I analyze data all day long, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
he had, okay, when she goes to sleep, her brain will finally be shut down enough
Hmm.
that I can circumvent the wiring that I gave her. It's beautiful, but I got to bypass it
Hmm.
so that I can get to her heart, because that's what's open.
Wow.
It was, and that's when I started having these experiences, and it changed
Hmm.
completely. I had a dream right in that same time period, and I dreamed that I was at church, and I came out, and I was seeing a lady in the church sitting next to a man. This man with long, straggly hair, black, kind of reminded me of some kind of maybe a homeless guy or something. And she was
Okay.
sitting next to him praying. And I had seen him in my dream walking around the church, and she was sitting next to him praying. And I thought, well, I'll go help her. So I walk down the aisle in my dream, and I sit down next to her, and I start praying as well. And he rolls his head over to me and looks at me in the eye, and he goes, I don't like you.
Mm.
And I go, I don't like you either.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I woke. I had this vision where my eyes were open. I was in my bedroom, but what I could see above me was what looked like black birds circling.
Hmm.
And I wasn't afraid. Wasn't that kind of dream?
Hmm.
It was for me. It was telling me that there has been, I don't know, the enemy has had free reign in the churches, and it was an opportunity for me to step up and address it.
Hmm.
It wasn't scary. It was just this insight, this knowledge, and out of that came my life verse is Hosea 4:6, and
What's that say?
my people perish for lack of knowledge.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything changed after that. I just, I would start sitting in church, and it was like these words would just burn in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember praying to God, either give me a platform or take it away,
Yeah.
because I can't sit here and do nothing.
Yeah. That the phrase I use for that moment is, you from that moment forward, you are ruined for ordinary life. Like, I've spent 15 years or whatever it is of my life, 16 years of my life trying to articulate and communicate that moment, um, to encourage people and try to um, share with people that there's more. And when you have these moments, so to be quite honest, there's this kind of, am I losing my mind? I mean, I don't know if you felt that way, but in those moments early on for me, it's like, okay, the cheese has finally slipped off the cracker. Like, for all these years, through the bullfights and all these wacky, just insane things that I was doing in my life, and people are like, that dude's crazy. And you're like, not really. Crazy people don't last at anything. And then you end up in these holy moments, these sacred moments of grace. And it's so unnatural, which I guess would define supernatural. If something's not natural, then it might fall under supernatural. And as you begin into that realm, there is that moment, and it's like, is there a glitch? Like, has the cheese slipped off the cracker? And God is so faithful in those moments to circle right back through scripture, through prayer, through vision while awake, through dreams while asleep, through another believer,
Yeah.
that kind of takes one to know one, um, through the elders, the wise, those that have been in the trenches for longer than you and I have been alive, that can see the aura, they can see the spirit in and around you, and it's that kind of takes one to know one moment. And then they come and they begin to affirm, right? They begin to speak that life and to affirm, this is what I see in you. This is what I sense or hear or feel, uh, for you. And yeah, so that was '08 for you.
Yeah, right around in there. And man, it just happens. From there on, it was just light speed. I remember telling God, I'm like, okay, don't go anywhere, but just give me a break a minute, man.
Yeah.
just,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
just let me physically, mentally, emotionally catch up, because you're running
Hmm.
and I'm like, feel like I'm being drugged behind the car. Just whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yes. Yes.
whoa.
Yeah.
Because
It's
people
like,
think I'm kooky. I think I'm kooky.
yeah, and that's what non-kooky people don't understand. So for all of you people out there that are non-kooks and you're listening to this, maybe in real time, maybe right this moment, you're listening to this and you're like, these two are weirdos. Like, you're reaching right now for the whatever button to flick or twist or whatever. We get it. Like, as you're living it, it's in this. You talk about bivocational, one foot in this and one foot in that. Even as a kook, as you're living this stuff out, there's still the human or carnal, physical, whatever you want to put to it. There's still that, for me, it's cynical. It's that cynicism, um, that's always, you were talking about your life verse, mine's Mark 9:23 and 24, where the guy comes to Jesus, says, if you can, blah, blah, blah. And Jesus says, what do you mean, if I can? All things are possible if a person believes, which is 23. And then 24, the man right back to Jesus says, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. And that's one thing that I love about you. And I, so far, bar none, the people who have been on this podcast, um, there is the authenticity in the relationship with one another and with God to say, okay, like I own the kookiness. I get it. I've been in it long enough. I'm comfortable with it. I own it. But then there's also this piece and part that says, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Yeah, because
live in that?
man, all the time, I preach a sermon series on doubt because what's so crazy about it is I preached it because I have it. And what's
Right,
so beautiful about it is Jesus never beat anybody up for their doubt.
right.
He never condemned anybody. He's just like, bring
Yeah,
it to me.
yeah,
Bring it to
yeah,
me
yeah.
because when you bring me your doubt, man, that's like the platform for breakthrough.
Hmm.
I can work with doubt.
Hmm.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about it, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I got a text from a friend just the other day, and I won't go into details, but the gist was I do believe, but I doubt. And am I doomed? Basically, was the gist of the text. And I'm like, no.
Mm-mm.
And he's like, but I've heard you say, like Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart. And I confess with my mouth, but my heart is lagging sometimes, this unbelief. And I'm like, go, in the text, there's never a time where Jesus thumps a person.
No.
Um,
Let me read you
and
something. I got a download at church the other day during worship, and because it fits in with what I was been talking about, and I wrote it down really fast. And what it is, what I felt like I heard is this, and it says, "Faith feeds on faith. Go to God with what you have.
mm,
It is okay to say, God, I don't have the faith for that.
mm,
It's not okay to reduce Him to fit your beliefs.
say that again.
It's okay to go to God with a lack of faith or unbelief or doubt. It's
Hmm.
okay
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
say to God, I don't have the faith for that,
Hmm.
but I want to. Help me with it, right? Help my unbelief.
Yes, yes,
But
yes.
what's not okay is to reduce God to fit your belief system. To say,
Man,
because I don't believe that, He can't, or He won't, or He doesn't.
that's the
Go
full
to Him with what you have.
that's the full meal deal. That's the fried chicken, the greens, the mashed potatoes with the gravy. That's all. That's the full meal deal. Don't reduce him to our lack of faith. Wow, that's a good word, Cathy.
Holy Spirit dropped it right in there.
There you go. So, when I met you early on, so going back to Tim Ross, Tim's gift is in relationships.
Yeah, He's a connector.
Like that dude is a connector of people. It's wild that you just said connector because I mean that is his gift. I mean, yes, he's a gifted landscaper. He can see things that don't exist yet and create beautiful spaces. He's an incredible husband, father, all of those things. But in the spiritual realm, in the church, he is a connector of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like you talk about relationships and God working through relationships. Um, that dude is gifted in connection. Um, so anyway, when I met you, I had heard about you long before I met you, and all good. A lot of stuff. And Tim, there's only really been a few people over the years that Tim's like, you have to meet this person. Like, I cannot wait for you and this person to meet. Brandon Freebie is one of those that Tim just stayed on me until he made sure that we connected. You have been were one of those people. But when I met you, the thing to me that was most fascinating about you is you were part of this street team. You were part of this crew that, and you can correct me if I'm remembering this wrong. I've been hit in the head too many times in my life, and so my memory is like weird. But the way that I remember it is there was this group of you who would go to the city, like you'd go to Kansas City or St. Louis, and just kind of walk the streets looking for people to pray over and discerning maybe if the Lord was giving you a word for somebody. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, there's a team that we used to do a lot of that with. We had some prayer ministry opportunities, um, and had some really beautiful experiences. Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Are there any stories from that you can share?
Oh my goodness, Ben. Yeah, there was one time where I wish I could remember her name. She was amazing. Very outspoken woman, very confident on the streets, which is good because I wasn't so much. And so partnering with her was beautiful. But we walked out and we saw this young African American woman walking along the sidewalk with her little boy. And so we walked right up to her and asked her, tell us a little bit about your story. What's going on? Would you like us to pray for you? And she said, yes, absolutely. I played with her little boy a little bit to kind of keep him occupied. He was maybe 3. And she was starting over. She was couch surfing with her little boy, trying to find a place to live. She wanted
Mm-hmm.
to be a teacher. She was trying to get back in school. She didn't have a car. I mean, just had been through a whole bunch of struggles. And so we prayed with her. And, it was a very nice prayer. But what I'll never forget was she turned around as we were walking away. She turned around and she stopped us one more time and she said, "You won't forget me, will you?" And I said,
Mm.
"No, absolutely not. I will never forget you. Not forget this experience, because people are so hungry for somebody to notice."
Mm-hmm.
I remember another time we were praying outside of a soup kitchen, and there was a gentleman out there that had this beat up uh, violin case, duct tape on it, and bungee cords wrapped around it. It had been beat up, and I looked at it. I looked at him, and I said, "Is that yours?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And I said, "Do you play?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Would you like me to?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And he got it out. And I'm telling you, Ben, he played the most beautiful music. I was just the talent, dirty, straggly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unkempt, didn't smell real
Mm-hmm.
good. The music that he could pull out of that violin was incredible. But he made the
Wow.
comment to me. He said he was shocked that I was a pastor because I had sandals on. This is funny, but I wore a toe ring. And he's like, "You wear a toe ring?" He was shocked at this fact. You can't be. Anyway, but he made the comment to me. He said, "People in church don't want me.
Ooh.
They don't want me in church."
Mm.
And I tried to talk to him. I'm like, "Okay, so that's like saying that sick people aren't allowed in hospitals. That's why we go, is because we're all." And he's like, "No, they don't want me in church."
Oh man.
There was another time I was down on a trail and there was a homeless man sleeping on a park bench. And I felt very convicted, and I went and I bought him some breakfast. And then I thought, no, I'm going to go get this man a Bible. And I think it was less about getting this man a Bible than about the exercise of trying to find one. Because here I am downtown where there's churches all over, big,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful churches that have been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
All of them were locked. I couldn't get in. I'm peeking in windows, knocking on doors, trying to see if there's anybody in there to get somebody's attention. Finally walked into one church, asked them if I could have a Bible to take to a homeless man. They said, "Well, no, those are pew Bibles. We don't think we have anything." Wouldn't give me one.
Okay.
Finally went down to the last church. I think it was the fourth church I walked into. And they said, "Yes, you hang on. I'll find you something," and found one for me.
Mm.
And I took it back and took him, and I put some money in it for him and took him lunch. He was still sleeping in his sleeping bag, and I just set it there. I didn't want to disturb him. But then I got to thinking, God is showing me something through that exercise. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many people on the outside looking in, and the
Mm-hmm.
doors are locked to them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just a hands. It was a pew Bible, for crying out loud. You and I both know how often those get opened.
No comment.
No comment.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Once somebody told me one time, we were talking about when I had my consulting business, it's easy to make assumptions about people, but that can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
My moment like that, you were talking about the guy with the violin, Gabe, who was on, I don't know what episode, but one of these episodes, my friend Gabe came on, I think 4. If I just got that right, I'm going to be impressed with myself. Which doesn't happen often, but I think Gabe was like episode 4 or something. And we met Gabe doing street ministry. Gabe is the one that introduced us to doing street ministry downtown Atlanta, and which for me was exhilarating. It was extremely uncomfortable, right? And equally as formational. Would you think that discomfort and formation often go hand in hand?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Spiritually, I mean, when we get to this place where we're uncomfortable and inconvenienced, typically those things parallel spiritual formation.
100%.
Yeah, I think so too. That's been my lived experience. Um, but this was that aha moment, and I'm going to try really hard right here not to nerd out. But so Brennan Manning is my favorite. I mean, he's my favorite author, and the Lord has done a lot in my heart through Brennan's writing and old grainy videos from like the 70s and 80s I've been able to find. And um, but Brennan does this talk about compassion, and compassion is this Greek word splagnissimi, which is literally a gut twist. And so, as a person that comes from an equine background, um, uh, beyond colic, when these horses get these twists in their gut, that's a big deal. I mean, oftentimes a horse has to be put down. And so I remember reading before we went to Atlanta to serve alongside Gabe. I remember reading somewhere in Brennan's work about compassion is not pity. Compassion is this gut wrenching ache. Um, and I remember thinking, I've never felt that. I don't think I've ever felt that when dealing with another person. I have felt pity. I have felt I felt a lot of things, but I don't know if I felt like this gut wrenching ache like we do with our kiddos or we do with, our spouses or when it's intimate. And what Brennan had written was when we begin to see glimpses of ourselves in another is when we cross this threshold from pity or feeling sorry for a person to this splagnissimi, this gut wrenching compassion. So I had read that. Fast forward a month or two, I don't know, and I'm sitting on this park bench. We're doing this work with Gabe. We've got our college and career age ministry there. We're downtown in a place, oddly enough, called Hurt Park, which was named after some rich people, some family or something. Um, but I'm sitting on this bench, and there is this uh, beautiful African American man. I would bet he's in his late 60s, early 70s. Round face, these same kind of cheeks, these kind of bulbous cheeks, and just the structure, the bone structure of his face, his composition and the way he was put together. I sit down, he sits down, whatever. We start talking. I don't really think much about it. We get a few minutes into this conversation, and out of nowhere, I realize this dude looks like my dad. And this was the first year we were at M25. And for the first time in my life, I was,
Wow.
I would have been like 34 years old, 35 years old, maybe. I don't know. And for the first time in my life, I felt in that moment, like when I had that moment, and I thought, gosh, this dude looks like my dad. He really does look like my dad, my earthly father. The and my gut twisted. And I felt what I had read about before, and became familiar with that feeling. Um, and everything changed on that bench. Like that dude was no longer a project for me, right?
That's
Like
good.
I wasn't trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to fill a need or patch a leaky hole. It was like I was in.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and it's one of those things. Once you experience that or feel that, you feel it more. You experience it more. You're when we see glimpses. There was another young man. His name was Sean, and Sean was sleeping on top of a cardboard box. He was he was under in Atlanta what they call Spaghetti Junction, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's where like I-75, I-85, I-20, and then the 285 bypass. All these things on the north side of the perimeter come in together, and they call it Spaghetti Junction. And there's just like, or maybe it's the south side of the perimeter. Anyway, it is an engineering feat.
Silly
And
string.
yes, it literally is, man. Like I have no idea who came up with this or how stoned they were when they drew it out. But it is Spaghetti Junction, and but beneath that, because of so many overpasses and all this stuff coming in, there is a lot of cover. And so beneath that there's like these tent cities, like
Yeah.
neighborhoods, if you will. And but there was this dude Sean, and he was sleeping. He didn't have any cover, and he was sleeping right up against like this concrete partition. You know those concrete things that kind of come up at the bottom and then they go up and they line them up in construction
Yep.
zones.
Yep.
All right, he's sleeping against one of those. So, however wide those are, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches, I don't know. The other side of that is I-75, I-85. Have you driven through Atlanta?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yes. And the only thing that is separating that dude from that traffic is this concrete
Yeah.
thing. Yes. Yeah. And so we're over here doing this work, and kind of out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching this guy. Um, and so I went over and sat down, just kind of, I walked up and, um, one thing we learned or Gabe taught us is when you approach somebody, don't ask them their name because they probably think you're a cop.
Mm-hmm.
So you just walk up and say, "Hey, I'm Ben," and if they offer their name, cool, and if not, cool. And so I walked up to him and said, "Hey, man, I'm Ben," and he said, "Sean." I said, "Can I sit down?" And he said, "Yeah, free country, you know." And so I plopped down and we began to talk, and he tells me a story. And I'm not going to go into his story, but he tells me a story, and there was a sequence of events in his life that happened that are atrocious. And it happened over the course of like 3 years, back to back to back to back. And he arrived at this place where all he could feel was hurt, and he didn't want to feel anymore. And so he started doing heroin to keep from feeling. Um, and in that moment, just like the dude on the park bench in Hurt Park, I remember looking at this guy and thinking, you know what? If I went through that and that and that and that back to back to back to back to back, this I would be laying right here. Like if I went through that, I wouldn't want to feel anything either. My point in that is there's a difference between pity or feeling sorry for a person and biblical compassion. And doing street ministry like you're talking about, or like some of the stuff that we've done, there is the discomfort, there is the inconvenience, but there is the spiritual growth. And when we begin to see parts and pieces of ourselves in others,
Yeah.
the game changes,
Yeah.
everything changes.
Yeah. I remember having this moment where I start, you just listen to stories and you ask them to tell them a little bit about their story. And you start to realize exactly what you said. For me, it was this realization that, if not for the grace of God, there go I.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, a
yeah,
few decisions or a few key life events away from maybe making
yeah,
those exact same situations happen.
yeah, yeah.
I remember one time we were praying with a homeless woman, and she was afraid. She just found out she was pregnant. And at the end of at the end of the prayer session, she asked to pray over me.
Wow,
Like, you got.
that's beautiful. That's
It
beautiful.
is. It was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I bawled through the whole thing. It was so
yeah.
humbling. There, yeah.
Did you find in street ministry that the people that you were going to were better versed, more well versed than you?
In scripture,
Yeah,
sometimes.
I found that more times than not. And as I unpacked that, like, so we would go and serve for a week or whatever, and then we'd go home, and I would sit and kind of unpack that and process. And what I realized is they are fully dependent. You remember earlier, just in this conversation, where we were talking about you get to that place and you're like, Jesus, I tell people this all the time. I preach this, I teach this, I read this, I whatever, but I need you
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
A lot of the people that we were loving and serving who live on the fringes, there, I need you now is every day.
Yeah, for
Like,
survival.
yeah, like those promises in the text, the truths in the text, it literally is every day. And there were times I would sit down with um, guys and girls who were living on the fringes. And when they found out that we were with a church group, they wanted to talk shop. Like they wanted to talk text.
Hmm.
And I would, we would. And I mean, so well versed, so well read, making connections from, I mean, blow my mind kind of dots connecting, but it was because there was a need,
Yeah,
right?
it was they were hungry.
Yeah.
Because I think, my friend Byron and I talk about that. He's been leaning into this phrase that he heard, and it's just come hungry. And I think sometimes we don't go to God hungry,
Hmm.
hungry
Hmm.
for more of Him. I mean hungry. I mean
Hmm.
desperately hungry. He will
Hmm.
always feed the ones who come to Him hungry.
Yeah. 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 So, what role do you think? So, with Simplify Project specifically, we're about cultivating authentic community, right? So, what role, in your opinion, does authentic community, authenticity, and relationship play in that work, that coming hungry, that those next steps, the discomfort, the inconvenience, the spiritual formation, the willing to be stretched, the going to the least of these. And make no mistake, sometimes the least of these drive really nice cars and wear really, really nice clothes.
Yes.
What role do you think that authenticity in community and in relationship plays in that?
Wow, Ben, it's crucial. I mean, I wouldn't be doing any of what I'm doing would it not for the relationships with you and with, the other people who see something in me in those times when I don't see it in myself. I mean,
Hmm.
we need God with skin on every now and then to speak into
Yeah.
us or to hear what he says for us or to speak that life into us. Because man, when you say yes to God doing some of the things that he gets you into doing,
Hmm.
you almost you ruin yourself for anything else that the world has to offer, but you also don't really fit into any group that easily anymore.
Oh man. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard.
You want to go there? Or
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, why not? If it'll help,
Yeah.
but you just don't. I remember the man who ordained me, a man who is the wisest man I've ever met in my life, a
Hmm.
man that I know as Apostle Freeman. I would sit at his feet and learn anything he taught me. I went to him one day. Everybody's got to have that person when you're not feeling very adult at all and the world's falling around. You need somebody who's more of an adult than you are.
Yeah.
He's that guy for me, right? So
Yeah.
I went to him and was having a lot of trouble and some stress, and I made the comment, I think I had to have, that I just don't feel like I fit in anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, isn't that wonderful?" What are you talking
No.
about?
No.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
No.
It's
The
really
answer is
not.
no. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But his point was God needs people who are willing to be on the periphery, you know.
Yeah.
And Aaron and I've talked about that because we talk about all the time about, okay, God, is it time to get somebody else to do this? Because I'm stressed and
Yeah.
I want to sleep in on a Sunday once in a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Aaron made the comment. He said, "Yeah, but can you just ever imagine yourself not saying yes to God?"
Mm-hmm.
No. I mean, if he asked me to do it, I would. I would do, yeah, yeah. I need you to go talk to that person. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's altogether different than the absence of community. Like saying yes or no to God, I guess it could parallel it or tie in, but you know, and this is a little of what we were talking about yesterday, which I think is so good and could be a gift to so many. Um, so like in our story, we left Middle Georgia where we had deep community, where we had people that we had journeyed with through so much, and the vulnerability and the wins and the losses and the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs, and in and through it all there was consistency and faithfulness, and that's community. um, and then you're a foreigner in a foreign land,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and attempting to recreate or not recreate, that's a terrible choice of words, but to build community, not necessarily to recreate what was there, but to establish new community. And yesterday our conversation was specifically as clergy persons, as people who are in vocational ministry, how hard that is, um, and how deeply we desire that. um, you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah. That's always been a struggle, I think, of mine. A heart cry for God is to have those deep relationships that
Hmm.
you're just naturally comfortable around, your tribe.
Hmm.
And when you do the kinds of things that we do, and you believe God for the things that we believe God for, and you see the things that we've seen, and you experience the things that we've experienced, it narrows it down to a pretty small group of people. Sometimes it feels like that anyway,
Hmm.
that you're okay with being yourself around.
Hmm.
If you're a leader, you're always a little bit on guard. I mean,
Hmm.
leaders don't necessarily go drinking with their friend, the troops. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's different to a degree. There's relationship there for sure, but you're always the pastor. It's always a little bit
Hmm.
different.
Yeah.
And maybe it should be. But then where do you find that place where you can be vulnerable?
Hmm. Outside of other pastors. So, like, I will
Yeah.
say, legal disclaimer: you and Brandon Freeby here
Yeah.
for me have been invaluable. I mean, we were friends before I moved here, um, but outside of other clergy persons, just to be normal, just
Yeah.
to be regular, normal,
Yeah.
just to be a person.
Yeah.
Uh, um, Yeah, that and I think that's a great point for your flock, for those that you are responsible to protect and provide and grow to feed. I get that, but beyond that, to cultivate this authenticity in relationship and the vulnerability um, is a gigantic piece. So, as a person who's bivocational on the secular side, do you have that at all, or does the pastoral side, the vocational ministry side, override that, or how is that? Does that
Yeah.
factor in any way, or no?
No, I is maybe I need lessons on simplify. Because
Uh,
I hate that, but I don't have time for that. I mean, if anybody is
gotcha.
closest to me, it's my family. I mean,
Yeah.
aside from like what you said with you and others in that pastoral role, Byron and
Mhm.
Ron and Roger, some other friends of mine,
Mhm. Who are amazing.
my
Maybe
family.
at some point we should have some of them on.
Oh, we should. That would be a lot of fun. That would be a
Uh,
lot of fun.
yeah.
But yeah, though, and I don't have time. I just don't. I mean,
Yeah.
you work 8 to 5. It's more than that. I
Mhm.
mean, but 8 to 5, and then I'm at
Mhm.
church maybe 3 nights a week, and then Saturdays I'm up at the crack of dawn, or well before working on Sunday, and then Sunday I'm up
Mhm.
well before working on Sunday. So
Mhm.
there isn't downtime, and
Yeah.
my life is pretty regimented, and I just don't have that.
Built in.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
That time.
Mm-mm.
And it takes intentionality. And so young adults, obviously my background is in youth and young adult ministry, and the ones who were youth are now young adults. Talk about feeling old. I mean, um, to be able to go and do weddings and then go back and do baptisms of infants and baby dedications. What a gift.
It's
Um,
awesome.
the flip side of that is you feel awful old.
Yep.
But such a gift, all the relationship in that. But um, you know, for the 30 somethings, for the late 20 somethings, the 30 somethings who have gone to college, gotten out of college, started their careers, gotten married, maybe their careers or their marriages or their spouses' careers carry them to a new place. Um, as a mom of two girls that are in that demographic,
Hmm.
in your opinion, what is the importance of community, of finding your place, finding your tribe? Where on the priority level should faith and community land, in your opinion?
Oh, it's crucial. I mean, we crave it. I don't know any human being alive that doesn't crave community somewhere. You
Right.
want some place to fit in and to feel connected and to feel safe and to be yourself and to have that be okay, your warts and all, and just have it be
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're weird, but I love you anyway. I get your weirdness and I'm okay with it. It's fine,
We need more of that.
you know.
You're a weirdo and I love you.
It's exactly right. You know,
Maybe that'll be the next shirt.
I like that.
If somebody happens to listen to this,
I like
like
that a
all
lot.
all three of you that actually listen to what we're doing, if you would wear a shirt that says "You're a weirdo and I love you," let me know. We'll print one.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
But I've watched my girls kind of crave that. You get out of college where you've got this built-in infrastructure of friends. It's like community is, you're walking into a pre-structured community. You're in with your classmates, and you're usually in your dorms with people who are in the same kind of major that you're in. So there's built-in community. And then you get out
Hmm.
in school, and man, my oldest daughter graduated during COVID. Oh, uh, she suffered. As I'm sure everybody did during that time frame, because she didn't have the community. She was alone in a new house by herself, didn't know anybody, couldn't get out to meet anybody. There was no churching. There was no, everything that I would have told her to go do to build community, it was shut down. She couldn't do it. So she learned to macrame.
Wow.
I mean, she's
Like literally?
yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, she would go check out books and work on these projects by herself. I mean,
Wow.
but that's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they
And
crave that.
there's an entire generation, there's an entire demographic of people who will hear this that experienced that. That graduated in 2020, in the spring of 2020 or
Yep.
21 or 22.
Yes.
That experienced what Caitlin experienced.
Yes.
Yeah. So even on the backside of that, the world opens up. What's your coaching? So you're a coach by nature. How do you coach Caitlin? And on the backside of that, the world opens back up. What do you, as a mom?
Well, what's funny about that, Ben, is now she's in a relationship with a very fine young man that she's met, and now I'm coaching her how to be in relationship. Because she's spent all this time. She's an independent woman. She's been by herself for such a long time, and she's done things on her own, and she's lived by herself for a long time, and she takes care of all of her own stuff. And all of a sudden, he's there, and she's like, "This is weird." I'm like, "No, this is what it's supposed to be like. You got to learn how to share your life with somebody. It's okay." She's like, "Mom, he's with me all the time." I'm like, "I know, isn't it great?" And she was like, "Oh."
So her normal has been altered.
Yes.
Her normal was alone in macrame, and now there's another person in her space. Bless her heart. Oh, me. She's incredible in every way, though. She called me the other night. I think she was actually on the way to your house, traveling down to hunt some and spend some time with y'all. And she called me, picked my brain about a couple things, which made my, me and our relationship, it made my whole day that she was.
Well, you got to tell the story, Ben. A couple weeks ago, they came to babysit our dogs because Aaron and I were off at a marriage retreat. And the two of them got their heads together and decided they were going to go back out to Locust Grove for church that they grew up in that Sunday morning. And you didn't know it until they walked up the communion line.
Man, and it made me cry. I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I had no clue because they were in the fellowship hall. The church, praise God, has grown to the point that there's folks in the sanctuary and then now in the fellowship hall, and I can see out there, but just the way we're set up, I can't get close physically, and so I knew there were faces, there were bodies, there were people out there that I didn't like, that weren't usually in that space, I guess is the best way to say that. And that morning, Darren and Aaron White were helping us serve communion, and Darren and Aaron stayed in the sanctuary, and Stacy and I kind of worked our way to that side, which typically is like the choir and the folks that sit in the alcove, and then those who are in the fellowship hall. And so I'm sitting there, just steadily serving communion, and I try very intentionally to like be fully present, like to look into the eyes of people as they come through. And so I'm doing that. I don't look up the line, And so, when it dawned on me, literally, Megan is standing in front of me, dipping bread into the cup. And it's like, I look at her and I'm like, I know you. Like, you know what I mean? It was like that moment. And then I looked at her and I remember like looking and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're here, And so then I got emotional. I got teary and all the things. And I'm like, reel it in, Ben, pull it back together. So, after the service, and the, what's that thing we do at the end?
the closing benediction.
The benediction. Yeah, that's what it's called, the benediction. So after the benediction, I kind of always go out and stand in this one place in the fellowship hall, kind of out of the way, and they came to me, and I was like, "You all got me. You got me good. Like you got me in my feels. I'm standing there trying to serve communion, trying not to cry. So yeah, that they got me good on that one. Made my day, man. A lot of relationship there.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, they said they walked in the church and it just all the feels kind of hit them.
Well, and
So,
earlier when you were telling the story from '08 or whenever that was of just sitting in those pews and weeping,
yeah.
we hadn't been here long. I mean, you and I have been meeting on Mondays since like the second week our family moved here. I mean, very very early on. I talked to you, if not daily, certainly every other day in the months before our move, and
Hmm.
then, I mean, very very regular. You and Aaron were praying over us, and you remember that weird season, like Stacy was living here, and me and the boys were there, and
Yes.
trying to prep the house to sell, and we didn't know if we were going to move here, like if we were going to be appointed to pastor this church. Um, what I'm getting at is I'm rambling a little bit, but the first time that we met for our Monday coffee, at that time we were meeting at the church.
Yep.
We weren't meeting in town, and when you came in those glass doors at the fellowship hall, you kind of came around that corner and you got emotional and walked, through the fellowship hall into the sanctuary and began to cry.
Hmm.
And I was like, I haven't been in here in whatever, how many years. I don't remember what you said, but it had
Yeah.
been years
Yeah.
since you had been in that space.
Yeah.
And to me, it didn't sound weird at all, but you said it looks the same, it smells the same, it feels the same, you know, and it's that going back to this place of encounter.
Yes. Yes.
It's going back to these places where Jesus met us. It's been years now, whatever. I don't know how many years since I've been, to my home church, which is Liberty Church in Macon. But every time I've been in there as a grown adult, gone back there for mostly for funerals, unfortunately, it's that same. Because you remember, God met me here.
Hmm.
God spoke to me here. God revealed this about his nature to me here. Um, a lot of our students talk about the big room and the black room in our student center.
Yep.
Uh, they talk about that. They would go off to college and they would come home and then come into those spaces and have of that that rush of emotion because they encountered God in those places.
And you know
Um,
what? I think that's probably what drives me more than anything.
mhm.
That going back to that, my people perish for lack of knowledge. I think I want people to have that experience. I want people to know him.
Yeah,
I want people to know that that he's real, you know?
yeah, yeah. Not just know about him, but to
Yes,
know him.
yes, yes,
There's a difference. There's a difference between knowing about him and knowing him,
yes, big time.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And if that isn't what gets you out of bed in the morning, what does?
Hmm.
If that's not what authentic community and relationship is centered and built on, what is?
Hmm.
You know, I don't want you to know about him. I want you to know him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I
like
remember one time, this has been about a year or so ago, that we were going through, I don't remember what the series was, we were teaching and teaching on Sunday mornings, and I heard God say, get your own story.
ooh,
Not from the perspective of, I mean, God's not snarky. It wasn't like that. It was like, we read these stories in scripture and we feed off of them. But he was
hmm
saying with great sense of compassion, get your own story,
yeah, I want to write your
I want to
story.
write
Yeah,
your story. You need to,
yeah, yeah,
yes, you can tell these stories and you can feed off of these, and they have for centuries. But
yeah,
what keeps what keeps it alive right now is your story. You have an encounter with God. Press in until you get one. Hold on to that. Don't let go of that. Be
yeah,
relentless for that because he's real.
yeah, yeah. and will ruin you for ordinary life.
Yeah.
And then you'll be a kook like us.
That's right. Welcome to the Kook Club. If you become a kook, you
Welcome,
call us. We'll just form a club.
welcome to the Kook Club. Yeah. Cathy, thank you. I don't want to take much more of your time. This has been gold. This is one of those episodes that I'll go back and listen to and listen to and listen to. Thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for how you are, for your consistency in my life and in the lives of so many. Thank you
Thanks
for
for being
being a
my friend,
giver.
bro.
Yeah. Thanks for being a giver in a world of takers. I appreciate you. Thanks for your time um, and for your wisdom and vulnerability. Thank you. Yeah.
Anytime. Love you, bro.
Uh, oh, yeah. All right. So I end every episode except for Gabe's with one question.
Okay.
And that is, so the name of the podcast is the Keep It Simple Podcast. So, Cathy Atkins, how do you keep it simple?
My instinct is I don't know that I do. You look at my life story. Okay.
That is guttural honesty.
It is. It is. It
No,
is.
that's real. I don't know if I keep it simple.
It's
When you
honest,
attempt
man.
when you attempt to keep it simple, how do you do that?
Calm center.
Yeah,
I mean, it may be chaos out here, but it can't be chaos in here.
gotcha.
It has to be a calm center because what I do depends on me hearing his voice. And
Amen.
if the chaos gets to the point where I can't do that, then I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Amen. Awesome. Thank you, sister.
Love you. Talk to you later.
We'll talk to you soon. I love you too. Bye.
Bye.